Hello, my name is Lena, and on this channel we have been far too sensible recently. We've been talking about politics, we've been talking about weddings, we've been talking about books. I think it's time for me to do some TM real journalism. So I present to you my latest unhinged PowerPoint presentation, Colin the Caterpillar, a deep dive into the British imagination by me, Lena Norms, a British woman, so I should know. Who is Colin? What am I talking about? How did this idea come about, I hear you ask? Well, in one of my recent videos, I talked about how me and my now husband, or steady, Craig, eloped, so we didn't have an official wedding party. However, I was not prepared to give up on the cake, and we pulled over at a service station on the way back from our runaway wedding at Gretna Green, and we got a Colin the Caterpillar cake, and we ate it in front of the TV in our B&B, and it was incredibly cozy. A lot of you were asking, those of you outside of Britain, what is a Colin the Caterpillar cake? Why is there so much cultural significance about it? And I realised that I couldn't summarise that in a sentence, I couldn't summarise that in a paragraph, but maybe if I made a 31-page PowerPoint presentation, we might be able to get close. So this is what it is. Hunker down, grab a tea, maybe even a little bit of chocolate cake, and get ready for the ride of your life. Thank you to Holly Turrell, one of the many people that requested this video. I am here to fulfill your request. In fact, my only aim is to please. So here we go. Who is Colin? Colin is an off-the-shelf supermarket chocolate roll cake with buttercream filling. That is kind of it. Like, you can click off the video now. If that's all you wanted to know, it's a frickin' branded cake, okay? However, I wouldn't be making this PowerPoint presentation if I didn't think it was significantly more than that. It's sold by the British retailer Marks and Spencer's, which is a staple of the British high street and has been, like, probably my grandparents have bought their knickers and underwear and apples and bananas from M&S. It's like a British staple of the high street. And in 1990, this cake that they started making became the staple for children's parties and office gatherings. I myself never had a Colin the Caterpillar cake for my birthday, but I remember attending other friends' parties and them having a Colin and being like, ooh, fancy, I've got some rich friends. Thank you, Mother, for hand making all of my birthday cakes until the age of 35. I'm very, very grateful, and they were objectively more imaginative than Colin. However, Colin holds a special place in all of our hearts, and he is a character in his own right. He even now has a TikTok account, just him, just Colin the Caterpillar. He has an Instagram page, he has a website, and he also has his own merch line. Am I joking? I'm not. Go and look it up. Don't spend all your money though, steady. So now you know who Colin is. This is what he looks like. I wish I could pass you a piece of Colin through the screen so you could really get a kind of 4D experience of like everything that Colin has to offer, the smell, the texture. But he's essentially a bit of white milk chocolate on the face, some milk chocolate coating, what are essentially Smarties. I'm sure they are just Smarties on his rump and down his spine. And then inside is this kind of magical concoction of rolled chocolate with chocolate buttercream. Yes, that is it, but there's more. What I think is delightful about Colin versus a lot of other shop-bought cakes on the market is there is definitely milk chocolate that has been used. A lot of the time, supermarkets will use cooking chocolate, which is really cheap, kind of like buttery. Almost tastes, no offense, guys, but it almost tastes like a North American chocolate, which is not good. And also, like, it's like British chocolate is much better because our climate is different, so we can have like more rich contents of the chocolate because it won't melt in the same way that it would in the... That's the whole thing. I'm not blaming you, but I'm just saying this chocolate tastes like British milk chocolate, which is a very different offering than cooking chocolate or cheap American chocolate. That is one thing I would say about the delight that you can't experience through the screen. But where did this tasty log come from? To answer that, we must go back in history to before Christ. I'm not kidding. So the Yule log is traditionally a kind of European and British tradition of the idea of bringing in a log for Christmas, or before Christmas, because it's the Yule log, which is of course before the Christians got there and ruined everything with their silly little ideas about the Bible. Before that, we had different traditions in Britain, and one of them was Yule, which has been taken over by the Christian Christmas. The Yule log was a large log that burned throughout the entire multi-festival for as many as 12 days. And the idea was, instead of going out and getting firewood, burning it, going out and get it again, you'd make the special effort during this Yule period to go out and get a really fuck off massive log, so that you wouldn't have to keep going out for firewood and you can actually have a little bit of a relax. Does it make sense? Okay, and it kept the house warm for those whole 12 days. Wasn't that nice? Now, building on that European tradition, we can potentially, and I say potentially, narrow down who might have invented the first chocolate log, or brûche de Noël, which is Pierre Lancôme. He is most likely the creator because he was the first person to publish the recipe in the late 1800s, which was also around the time that that tradition of bringing in the log started to fade out. People stopped having fireplaces, they stopped bringing in logs, they probably stopped celebrating Yule, I guess, and switched to Christmas, which has different traditions attached to it. But for whatever reason, somebody, and Pierre might have been the person, or he might have just been the first person to write it down, decided to encase this great tradition in sugar and buttercream and chocolate and create the first recipe. It is listed as a rich, airy sponge cake sandwiched together with coffee or chocolate flavoured buttercream to create a log shape. The small branches were cut from additional pieces of gensois. Gensois? What is this word? Who can say? And attached using buttercream. The ensemble was then piped with yet more buttercream using a fluted nozzle to create the effect of bark. And that's what we have in front of us, ladies and gentlemen. The brûche de Noël, or in British, the chocolate log. But why, I hear you ask, does Colin have a face? Well, we can ask history about that too. Now, Cailleach is, in the Gaelic tradition, a goddess of the winter months and of winter, and it was considered very, very lucky in Scottish history to carve her face on a log before setting it onto the fire at Christmas Eve, while the whole family sat around and watched this face in the fire burn. In some fables, Cailleach is considered to be the creator of Scotland itself, like very much a kind of Mother Earth figure, but also she is associated with this tradition of her actions being the result of winter ending. But there's a story that on the 1st of February, Cailleach will go out and look for firewood, and if she wants to go and look out for firewood early, she'll make the day a light one, and if she oversleeps and she doesn't get out until later on the 1st of February to collect the firewood, it will be a dark one, and that determines whether it is going to be a couple more months of dark winter, or we are going to start seeing winter lift on the 1st of February every year. Gaelic fable experts, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but that is what I can gather. Suffice to say, the idea of carving a face onto a block of wood held this huge significance of bidding farewell to the cold, dark, hardships of the winter and moving into new beginnings and spring and warmth. No wonder it is a cake of celebration. We might also suspect that the idea of the chocolate log having a face could come from Catalonia. There they have this thing called T.O. Nadel, which also translates as Christmas log, or is simply sometimes known as Troca or Trunk. It is a character in Catalonian mythology relating to the Christmas tradition. The tradition is that you have a log with a face on it sitting in your home starting on the 8th of December, or Immaculate Conception, and then you give it a little bit to eat every night, and usually cover with them a blanket in the evenings. And then the story goes that on the days preceding Christmas, children must take good care of the log, keep it warm and fed, and so that he will defecate presents on Christmas Day. I'm not kidding. In fact, there's even a song. Would you like me to read you the English translation? Shit tayo, hazelnuts and nuggets. Not just shit herrings, for they are too salty, shit nuggets, for they taste better. Shit tayo, almonds and nuggets, and if you don't want to shit, I will hit you with a stick. Shit tayo. Oh, I love the places that Wikipedia takes me. This is a song sung during that celebration, and after hitting Tayo softly with a stick during the song, it's hit harder at the words "shit Tayo" right at the end. Then somebody has to put their hand under the blanket and takes a gift. So I'm guessing that some adult puts the gifts under the blanket. The gift is opened and then the song begins again. I will certainly be trying out this tradition this Christmas, I think. And here's a little porcelain illustration of what we must be picturing during the ritual. So those are some of the traditions that M&S might have been considering when they were like, should we put a face on a log? They may, however, also have been thinking a little bit more commercially, because The Very Hungry Caterpillar was an absolutely huge book in Britain during the 90s. It was actually released in 1969, but it got bigger and bigger and bigger. The sales for that are absolutely unhinged around the world. Let me know wherever you live if you read The Hungry Caterpillar, but it was very big in the UK. And I think around the 90s, it would have been just about the right amount of time for the kids that were reading it in the 1970s to have grown up and had their own kids and then be buying more copies of The Hungry Caterpillar. Do you know what I mean? Like second generation mania of The Hungry Caterpillar. Since its release, The Very Hungry Caterpillar has sold 50 million copies, which is approximately one copy every 30 seconds. So I would be amiss to not note that maybe when M&S were creating their best-selling cake, they were thinking, people like caterpillars, kids like caterpillars, adults nostalgically love caterpillars. Let's do caterpillars. The motivation could, of course, also simply be money. Chocolate logs are a staple of the supermarket shelves during Christmas, and I would not be surprised if there was a meeting where they were like, how do we sell chocolate logs all year round? They make us so much money at Christmas. How do we multiply that? How do we get people to keep buying chocolate logs even when it is not warm and Christmassy and nostalgic? Which would ring true with their continuation of marketing of Colin. Not only have since the 30th birthday in 2020, we now have Colin the Caterpillar Day, which if you're interested is the 26th of August, but we also have a spine-tingling Colin for your Halloween party. We have a sleigh ride Colin for your Christmas day, and an Easter bunny Colin for your Easter egg hunting parties. I kid you not. But I think what is also important is to note that the success of Colin the Caterpillar cake isn't just down to the cake itself, it's down to the people who sell it. What you need to understand about Marks and Spencer's, like I said earlier, is that it is a British institution. It's been on our high street since 1884. People associate it now with being quite middle class and a good dollop of British respectability. But actually, did you know that it was started in the north, in Leeds? The main USP for Marks and Spencer's at the beginning was that everything was at a fixed price. You couldn't barter for things. It was just like very straightforward. They used the slogan, "Don't ask the price, it's a penny," and it was started by the Jewish immigrant Michael Marks, who arrived in England from Belarus, and it became this like symbol of respectability and good, you can count on it, everything lasts that comes from Marks and Spencer's kind of commerce. So what's important to remember is that when they launch Colin the Caterpillar, they are launching an extension of that brand legacy. And you can tell that in the way they describe Colin even on their website today. According to them, it takes 38 people to assemble each cake from start to finish. 8.4 tons of sugar coating are used every year for the decorative spots. He is hand rolled, uniquely designed, and each chocolate speckle and boot is placed on one by one with precision. There are 3 different types of chocolate: milk, white and dark, and they really emphasise that they use free-range eggs. All very important, but all contribute to this idea of respectability and institution and British legacy, or what I would call the commercialisation of cheer. But Colin's success can not only be put down to the actual product itself and the legacy respectability of Marks and Spencer's, there has also been some help from some friends. Colin the Caterpillar is a guest of honour at over 1 million parties every year, and some of those millions happen to be celebrities. We've got Judi Dench, who hailed in her 83rd birthday in relatable style with a Colin. And we've got David Beckham, who celebrated his 41st proudly with a Colin. David Cameron, greedy, had 2 at his party, at the Tory party conference. Never trust a Tory. I'm sure that he shared it. And Liam Gallagher even tweeted about his love of the M&S Colin the Caterpillars. But with friends come rivals. Everybody loves caterpillars till a caterpillar's doing better than you. So here are some of the rivals that Colin has come up against in his past. These look like scary names, and it's only going to get scarier. We've got Carl the Caterpillar, which is Tesco's offering that rivals Colin. Big orange face instead. This scares me, if I'm honest, and the big red nose as well. I think is a little abrasive. This additionally does have sprinkles on top. All of that swirl in the middle is looking a little bit poor, not gonna lie. Asda, Clyde the Caterpillar, again with the swirl. We've got a green face for Clyde, and these, instead of like having a mold face, we've got these like googly eye things. Then we've got Charlie the Caterpillar from the Co-op. The list goes on. And then Wiggles the Caterpillar from Sainsbury's. But by far, Colin's biggest enemy is Cuthbert. Now let me tell you about Cuthbert. Cuthbert and his lawsuits. Why wouldn't this get out of my newsfeed a few years ago? Now Aldi is a retailer in the UK that is known for passing off name brand products with their own cheaper, more budget replicas of them, essentially. Look at all these things here. We've got Oreos, we've got Nutella, Weetabix, ketchup. There's nothing that they won't touch, and they are not the stranger to the courts for it. However, in 2021, M&S looked at all these different replications and thought, not today, Cuthbert. Whilst, as you can see on the right, that a lot of the Colin the Caterpillar replicas are also packaged in this green packaging, exactly the same size, exactly the same kind of ingredients. It was Aldi they went after, and they were pissed. However, they did manage to settle out of court. Yes, they did take it to the High Court. There is no limit to what I've learned as I've become an adult is that adults are time wasters too. I thought children were time wasters, but adults, wow, they can really waste people's time. However, the Deputy Master, Timothy John Bowles, signed off an agreement in the consent order filed in the High Court that said that they had called it a truce, and the truce was secret, but I'm imagining some money changed hands and things calmed down for a little bit. But, however, to say that Aldi didn't take that High Court smackdown seriously would be an understatement. Not only did they just kind of like bully Marks and Spencer's on social media, calling them Marks and Snitches, they did some like joke live sketches from inside the courtroom. They photoshopped Cuthbert's packaging so that he was in a cage. And they also released this absolutely ridiculous advert that I'm going to let you watch now.
All right, Cuthbert. Colin. Man the cake! Man the cake!
So hopefully that's given you a little overview as to who Colin is and his history. And to just recap, I wanted to talk about the pillars of success that I think make Colin the juggernaut of marketing that he is today. Number one is nostalgia. Never underestimate nostalgia, especially when the economy is becoming more fraught and worries become more global. He might be, for a lot of people, an emblem of simpler times, even if they didn't have it in their childhood, even if they had it when they used to work in an office, and now they don't work in an office anymore, and sometimes they fantasize about working in an office, even when they worked in the office, even though that when they worked in the office they absolutely bloody thought they hated it. Now I'm like, I would absolutely kill to just sit on one of those breakout sofas with all of my old colleagues and share a little Colin. Do you know what I mean? I'm talking about myself if it's not clear. I do think there is a kind of compound nostalgia for Colin in that the more times you have Colin at significant life events, the more the nostalgia amps up, even if it wasn't a childhood staple for you, as it wasn't for me. And also there's this idea, kind of like the lipstick economy theory. Have you heard of that? That when the economy is going badly, lipstick sales go up because lipsticks are an affordable luxury. So people might be downsizing their house, downsizing their car, cancelling their gym memberships, etc., etc. But they can still have a nice little cake at the weekend on their birthday, can't they? They can still buy a lipstick that's designer, even if they couldn't buy a designer handbag. That's the ethos. The relationship between nostalgia and economy is not to be underestimated. Number two is that it's very easy to divvy up. I don't know if you've ever tried to cut a circular cake for 20 people, but it's a ball ache. It gets all like flimsy at the point. It sometimes gets too chunky at the thing. It's really hard to like pick up and give to people without getting your germs on them, which again I think became even more important now we've all like experienced COVID, like the idea of having to, so I just think it's much more simple to divvy up a singular Cilandria. What's that word? Oh no, my brain's broken. No more PowerPoint for me. So I'm cylindric. Is that the word? I think that's the word. What's happening? We'll go with barrel shape, shall we? Barrel shapes, much easier to separate into portions, especially because Colin has like little creepy spines on his back, so you know where to cut. It's very simple, and it's also very easy to store if it's unfinished, which again, for an impromptu party or a kid's birthday party or something, it's very easy just to pop it in. You can keep it in the fridge, no worries. It's also easy to conceal for surprises. I, for one, have been sent out on an office jaunt to quickly get a Colin the Caterpillar because we've forgotten somebody's office birthday, and it's very easy to just pop in a tote bag, rather than if you have like a big cylindrical cake that has loads of like delicate stuff on top, you have to carry it. It's hard to hide. They're also easy to transport, easy to pop in a handbag, easy to put in a rucksack, all of those things. Number 4, it's very quick, accessible, and well suited to a lack of planning. Not only for those reasons that I just said about like packing it in a backpack or a tote bag, but also because with the rise of M&Ss in every train station and like lots of other places that you might not find any other kind of supermarket, it's something that you often will walk past on the way to anywhere, especially if you work in a big city. I've written here, and you're welcome to write a video essay on this. Does Colin's success track against a rise in women in the workplace and a decrease in lack of leisure time for British workers? You can answer that. I don't know when I wrote that, probably at 3 in the morning, but it sounds like something that could have a good essay behind it, although I have no data to back that up, just saying. It is a form of affordable luxury. As the cost of living continues, you might have to move into smaller houses. I've already said this, why am I saying this again? Lena, I think you've tried to make 6 points out of something that was just 5 points, but it is an affordable luxury. We have less haircuts, but a cake under £10 still feels like a less financially risky treat, as you can see demonstrated by people heralding the very rich Dame Judi Dench for having something as humble as a Colin the Caterpillar cake. Number 6 is generally just a British aversion to sincerity. It feels very intimate and very caring to give somebody a cake, so obviously we have to have a little bit of a laugh about it. It's no big deal. It's just a Colin. It's just a little silly caterpillar. You know what I mean? Like that brings like a kind of sense of joviality and fun to something that could also just be caring and sincere, but we want a little giggle, and I think there's nothing wrong with that, but I think it is something that speaks to the British character at least. And then finally, let's have a little talk, because this is the channel of Positive Panic. If you haven't been here before, I also sometimes sneak in some climate conversations into my very silly and whimsical videos. And of course, we have to look a little bit about the state of the real Colins of Britain. And they're not doing so good. Since 1980, 80% of butterfly species have decreased in abundance in the UK. 8 UK butterfly species are listed as endangered, and a further 16 are vulnerable. Just to catch you up, if you're a little bit behind, caterpillars? That's for when Colin the Caterpillar gets old and he needs to have his structure reignited a little bit for photos. Caterpillars are butterflies. There you go. You can have that for free. Education. Lest you need a reminder, insects in general are extremely important for ecosystems and humans. They pollinate around 80% of our crops. And also, just to bring you up to speed, crops mean food. We need food. Without food, we die. Seems obvious, but I don't think our politicians in the UK have quite grasped that concept. So anyway, butterflies, not just nice to look at, actually kind of a lifesaver. Not only is the whole world getting drier and warmer, earlier in July 2022, we saw the driest July in the UK since 1935. It is also causing spring to start earlier and earlier every year. Who cares about that? I love a bit of spring. Hate winter, love spring. Why would that be a problem? Well, it turns out that causes caterpillars to hatch earlier into butterflies, as we know. Caterpillars are butterflies, which would be fine if they weren't also a food source for birds. And birds can't evolve that fast to just start having spring earlier. Great tits are an example of a bird that relies on the butterfly and caterpillar population to eat and to feed their young. And it simply just means that when their young are being born, there aren't that many caterpillars on offer. Most of the caterpillars aren't there anymore. Do you see the problem? It's called a threshold of asynchrony, and it's not looking good for the caterpillars and the great tits, which now have an increased risk of extinction because of the lack of Collins. So if we can transfer our love of the cake Colin into our love of all the Collins around us, maybe we can start transferring that commercialization of nostalgia and cheer into like real future cheer. Back to the cake Colin. Let's talk about the future threats of our friend Colin the Caterpillar. As audiences wise up to the anthropomorphizing, I don't know if I can use the word anthropomorphizing for this, but like anthropomorphizing is when you give human characteristics to animals. What is the word, if there is one? If there isn't, there should be. What is the word for when you give human characteristics to cake? A cake that is shaped like an animal. Is that still anthropomorphizing, or is that anthropocakeamizing? Please tell me, letters on a postcard. Anyway, as we wise up to brands kind of anthropomorphizing themselves, like giving themselves human characteristics and making themselves like real people, even though they don't act like real people and they can't be held accountable like real people, can Colin conceal a lot of the ethical dilemmas shoppers face around things like fast fashion, low wages, and dairy consumption, essentially? These are all things that M&S is guilty of and rivals of. I think in the wages section they're doing a lot better than some people, but there's always room for more sharing. No. And then also, as the under-regulation of billionaires keeps happening and normal people who just want to use money to buy food struggle to make ends meet, will M&S in general start declining as shoppers are forced into these cheaper options and start getting Cuthberts and stuff like that instead? There is also the question of the spread of veganism. The population of vegans is growing by around 1 million per year in the UK, and the only vegan example of a Colin knockoff I could find was at Sainsbury's. They do an Eric. Just so all the vegans know, they do an Eric. I'm gonna go and try one, I think. But apart from that, M&S don't. M&S are actually quite shit for vegan food in general. I'm just gonna put that out there. Absolutely shocking. But as veganism as an ideology and a practice expands, will M&S have to adapt or die, much like the Colin the Caterpillars in the wild? And then finally, nostalgia does fade. As millennials age and parents become more Gen Z and Gen Alpha, are they reading The Very Hungry Caterpillar, or are they reading like Bluey and David Walliams and Peppa Pig? I don't know. You parents out there, tell me what you're reading your children, and are you reading them The Very Hungry Caterpillar? And will we have the same nostalgic association with caterpillars and therefore Colin himself? I'm not sure how long that can last. And there we are. We come to the end of our journey, my friends. It has been a long trek through the forest to find our Collins and reconcile ourselves with the many histories that he may encompass. Bet you're sorry you asked. If you're not sorry you asked though, thank you so much for watching this video in its entire absolute silliness was made possible by the Gumption Club. They are my patrons who tip me for the videos that I make so I can keep giving them out for free and keep making them and keep the lights on, and that I don't have to take on like sponsors or think about, oh, should I badmouth M&S in public because one day they might want to sponsor this channel and I need to have a job and eat as well so I can afford my Collins. I don't need to worry about that because they make that possible, so I'm not dependent on brand revenue to make these silly videos. So thank you so much to them. That's very, very helpful. Also, if you're a patron, I will take your suggestions of silly video essays more seriously. So if you want me to cover more unhinged topics in PowerPoint form, consider joining the Gumption Club there. We have a fun Discord as well where we chat all the time about everything from the very, very serious to the absolutely ridiculous, and I love having that online community that's away from Instagram and scrolling and stuff. It's a great place for me to hang out online. If you liked this video because of the PowerPoint element, you might like my video on Wicked. It's a deep dive into the Wicked Witch of the West and her various aspects and eccentricities. Or if you liked the idea of veganism and you want to hear more about that in like a really less scary way, then you might like this video on that. Thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to hear your stories of your happy Collins memories, or if you're not British, let me know if you feel more included on the joke now. Thank you so much for watching. Frogs log out!